If maps represent the world, how real are the maps made by Europeans when they did not know the landmass east of the Atlantic or west of the Pacific? By the same token, can we say native maps are realistic if they ignored Europe? Imagined worlds, monsters, and fantasy. Conquest and colonization drove the changes that would shape much of the modern world. The first decades of imperial expansion witnessed advances in cartography that helped shape a new idea of the world. Geographical realism, the idea that the shapes on a map resemble the shapes of the world, is a modern cultural and scientific value that is recent in human history. America did not exist as a continent in the geographical imagination of Columbus or his contemporaries, whether European or non-European. One of the primary technical and cartographic advancements was the creation of portolan charts, which are a form of medieval maps that enabled coastal navigation and the production of more accurate maps. The development of the printing press in Europe around 1440 did not immediately lead to the mass map production, as maps remained state secrets due to their role in imperial politics. However, the printing press did help standardize their production. Many maps continue to be handmade in the Americas, and it is common to find signs of previous cartographic technology embedded in more modern documents. New technology never entirely replaces previous ones. It is common for different practices to coexist and survive over time. Indirectly, the printing press influenced cartography by rediscovering philosophical and scientific works that shaped cartographic thought, such as the early 15th century translation of Ptolemy's Geographia. This work introduced concepts like latitude and longitude and set cartography on its path to becoming a science, at a time in which science was also being constituted as a legitimate form of knowledge while disregarding others. Map makers had to make multiple decisions. For instance, working with projections became necessary since the Earth is round, but most maps are flat. The Mercator projection, created in 1569, is the most familiar to modern eyes. The name America became widely recognized thanks to a map using this projection. On the road to professionalization, maps began to include scales and grid systems for measuring distances and locating places. Terrestrial and celestial globes represented the Earth and the skies, allowing people to understand the world as a complete entity. Atlases, books compiling maps from around the world, also contributed to this idea and helped standardize maps from different sources for a broader audience. Early European maps featured elaborate decorations, including sea monsters, mythological elements, and depictions of people. These creatures were included as marginalia. These representations later appeared in early colonial American maps, where Indigenous and African people were depicted in scenes of cannibalism, violence against infants, gigantism, or monstrous forms. For a long time, these images were understood as mere aesthetic elements of maps. Still, their iconography also served to incorporate Indigenous peoples into the Western world under conditions of inferiority. The term Indians left a lasting legacy as a category that grouped highly diverse peoples and cultures. Groups inhabiting unconquered lands were considered savages or enemies, while those who had better relations with colonial agents were depicted as friends. These strategies were closely tied to the desire to control natural resources, one of the driving forces of conquest, which was largely a private business venture that later transformed into several imperial projects. Who is the author of a map? Every map contains Indigenous knowledge, even though it is often made invisible. Indigenous people were the ones who knew the lands being mapped. Spanish religious authorities destroyed many maps and codices drawn on agave fiber. However, what has not been erased is the influence that native groups had on colonial cartography. These maps bring us closer to other histories, narrating the space and time of those who witnessed the European advances over their lands, bodies, and legacies. Dispossessions in the Americas. American Archives for Just Futures.